All right, welcome back
Welcome
to
back.
week 2
Here we
of Mental
go.
Health Awareness Month. And this week, I'm going to be quiet. Last week, it was all me blabbing on. This week is about speech therapy. So I was fortunate enough to not need it. I did fail my first hearing test around the same time as Julie did, but mine was, I had enough residual hearing that I didn't need it. And so speech therapy has changed so much. And
Thankfully.
the first time that we presented at Northeastern University to speech therapists, and Julie it's such a heartbreaking history. And so the trauma that she had to go through, because it's come a long way,
Thankfully.
is the relationship, is the hook into Mental Health Awareness Month, because the things that people had to go through has changed. It's much better now, as you'll see from what Julie will say, but there's still a lot of hard things to come to terms with when you do this. So Julie, please let us know.
So I want to drop us in time. I want to set up our timeline so you know where we are in history. So we're going back to the early 70s, just a little bit of history about special education law. So in 1972 in Massachusetts, Law Chapter 766 was passed, which guarantees equal access to education for all people with disabilities, okay? Prior to that, in public schools, people were not being educated with their typical peers. We were looking at things of institutionalization of people with disabilities. We're looking at special segregated schools where, if you look at the history of schools like the Fernald School in Waltham, Massachusetts, heartbreaking. There was a lot of shutting away, pushing away, shunning of people with disabilities, from intellectual disability all the way through, because of an understanding at the time that these people were not educable. So Chapter 766 in Massachusetts was passed. That was the first law in the United States that guaranteed access for children with disabilities to education. That wasn't even the federal law. Federal hadn't even gone through yet. Mass was the initiator of that and really the pioneers. It wasn't until 1975 that the federal law came in 3 years later, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. And that was modeled after what Massachusetts had already done 3 years prior.
That's great.
So by the time I entered kindergarten in 1978, we're only talking about a federal law that had been in place for 3 years. And it wasn't being done well. I was the first mainstream student. So mainstream was the term they used then for students with disabilities being in the public school setting with their typical peers. I was the first one in the district. So not only we have a law that's 3 years old, you have your first kid coming in, and they did not know what to do with me. So I just want to briefly give this disclaimer that this is not representative of all speech therapists or speech and language pathologists or speech experiences in the early 70s and 80s. This is strictly my personal story of what I experienced and the scars that I still carry now as a 51-year-old woman with hearing loss. It started with the speech therapist who was not very warm, understanding, comforting. I still can see her in such great detail with her orange talon nails. And the woman always smelled like a salami sandwich, okay? I take inspiration from this as an educator because I never want to be some kid's bad memory. I'm sure I am at some point. But in 30 years, I hear from a lot of my students still. I think we're doing okay. So at that time, you were pulled out of your classroom. And the scheduling wasn't considerate. So, for example, it fit into when the speech therapist had a spot. So maybe one year I was pulled out during math 2 days a week, missing math lessons.
Yeah, I guess you need
Maybe I was pulled out another year during, I don't know, like free craft time. So I would miss that time with my peers in the classroom, okay? When I would re-enter the classroom, none of those opportunities were afforded to me to make that up. Think about how a first grader would feel if your classroom is making a Christmas craft with egg cartons or something, and the teacher comes to the door and says, okay, time for speech, and you have to stand up and leave that. That was the pervasive scheduling happening at that time across multiple school districts. That was not uncommon. Right. That wasn't particular to what I was dealing with. Nothing was ever explained. Why was I leaving the room? Why was I being singled out by the person coming to the door doing this? And you had to stand up and everybody would watch you as you would walk out of the room. I would go down to these sessions and it was never explained to me, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
What we were doing was oral rehab to help my brain train itself to process sound inauthentically through machines.
Right.
Articulation, thank God, because with the hearing loss level I have, I needed a lot of reinforcement. And even now, as my hearing goes, I'm constantly aware, where's my tongue, where's my teeth, where are my lips, what shapes am I making, okay? It was in a boiler room.
Ugh.
Because schools were not built to have areas for separate services. So I was taken down to a basement with a humming boiler.
Oh, I'm sure.
That was the spot where the speech therapist had to do her work with students one-on-one. Okay? Humiliating. I didn't know what the word was at the time in elementary school, but I certainly knew how it felt, and now I can put words to it.
And think about the background noise you had to filter through.
The humming. It was horrendous.
Worst possible place for that.
I would go into these sessions. Again, no explanation. I would be seated in a chair with my back to the speech therapist.
I don't understand that.
Which I think at the time was part of the oral rehab strategy. I'm curious to know what it's like now. I'm actually be meeting with someone next week who I can ask those questions to. No explanation. Just sit in the chair in the loud, hot room with the buzzing boiler and repeat what the person behind me is saying, and then getting corrected when I didn't pronounce it correctly. Terrifying. Terrifying for a little kid.
Why would you take a tool away from a child or anyone, right? Like reading lips is part of the strategy.
I think
Why
it was
take that
because
away?
of trying to train the brain. I think there's a purpose behind it.
I guess.
But also the delivery of the corrections.
Yeah.
There was no positivity. There were no games. There was nothing colorful.
No.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
The other issue, as an educator now whose life is based in data and student evaluation and coming to conclusions, her data reporting was completely on her observation and her opinion.
So subjective.
So, for example, rarely am I required, this is 1982, I was in second grade, rarely am I required to repeat any sentence or communication in order to be heard or understood, no matter how far removed from the topic. How does she know what I could or could not hear?
Right.
Rarely is it necessary to repeat. How do you know? I was probably too scared to ask for a repetition. I'm extremely adept at filling in the gaps and using context clues and using my intelligence to figure out, okay, what might be happening. Let me take a great educated guess. Okay? It brings up a lot of visceral emotion and vulnerability, but I do have her to thank for my 30-year career of special education because that was part of the inspiration.
Sure.
Fortunately, by the time moved on, and by the time I got to middle school, I had fantastic speech therapists in middle school and high school.
Great.
Margaret Reed and John Deming, wherever you are, thank you. They were unbelievable because they helped me with the social pragmatics. They helped me with organizing myself to do great learning, note-taking strategies, study skills, advocating for me with my teachers, giving me the language to advocate even more than I already had because I was learning what type of learner I was. They were amazing. So I'm happy to report that we've seen an evolution of speech and language therapies now. I have fantastic speech therapists I've worked with throughout my career. The job has shifted from strictly working with students on these skills to advocating for students, helping students learn to self-advocate, consultation with the families.
That's awesome.
Going to the classroom teachers and saying, hey, is it working for the student to sit up front? Should we move it back a row? What's her sight lines? All of these things that were missing that my parents and I had to figure out against teachers that just were not informed. And I would venture some just didn't care because I was seen as a burden on society and there was no familiarity and there was blatant ignorance. My second grade teacher, she said to my parents, her hearing loss isn't real. You're just pushing her ahead so she can be in the advanced reading group. Okay? I can go on for an hour on that whole thing. Not a lot of great memories of elementary school, unfortunately. My kindergarten and first grade teachers were amazing, and they're the reasons that my cousin Sherry and I went into education, and we stayed in touch with them until they passed away. They were amazing. The other thing I'm happy to report, I know I had talked about that woman's evaluation of me being very subjective. There's been a dramatic shift in data reporting now where you're using things like standard scores, you're using observation, using student input. So here's just a sample sentence here. Jay presents at this time with overall language skills falling within the average range as measured by the CASEL, standard score of 99%. Receptively, understanding vocabulary, standard score of 98% in the average range. There's all these assessments now that are targeting those specific skills, plus observation, plus teacher reporting, plus asking the kid, how do you think it's going? Okay? I mean, it's amazing the difference, thankfully.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that really made my heart happy as I've seen it evolve through my own career over the past 30 years. But man, I never, ever, ever want any child to carry that upset through their adult life. I feel like I'm thrown back there.
Yeah, it's trauma. It's 100%
It's traumatic. And I wrote a blog post about it, and I kind of really went there against that speech therapist, and I don't apologize for it. But certainly link that below, Brad, if you want, for people to take a look. But yeah, it impacts me big time. It's still, I just get angry and sad.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
you for sharing.
I'm fine.
Thank you for sharing. It's
Yeah,
tough. It's tough to relive that kind of stuff.
That's that mental health part of disability that I think people don't realize.
Thank you so much for sharing it, because I didn't have to do it, and I think that there's a valid this usefulness to seeing the history. Yeah, it's no longer the case, but is it always no longer the case? And so these are the things that we want to make people aware of. Is it's needed. Oral rehabilitation is needed, but the intention and how it's delivered need to be so carefully thought out, right? Because that's horrible. I mean, I bet you can't even go into basements anymore because that memory, the visceral reaction, the younger something happens.
It's horrible, and I was made to feel that there was something wrong with me.
Right? Yeah. No.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like Lady Gaga says, I was born this way. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
Anyway,
thank you so much.
That was a heavy
for
one,
sharing.
but I think it was necessary.
I think so. I think we needed to, because these are tough conversations, and sometimes they're really tough conversations. And so making people aware of what's okay and what's not okay. Sometimes you can't do much about it, but at least you know why things are happening. And sometimes it's easier to accept. But yeah, if you're a parent of a child with the hearing loss, communication, right? Over communicate. You're going to make teachers and principals upset with you. Of course you are, because there's so much going on.
So much.
But your kid deserves it, right? Your kid deserves it. So,
And I'd venture to say, at least in my experience, the feeling of being a burden is completely gone.
oh, good. That's so good.
The acceptance is incredible, and it's about educating the whole child, not fitting that child into a preconceived mold, right?
That's great to hear, because sometimes I do feel like a burden because I haven't been advocating for my hearing needs long enough. And there are times when I'm tired and the introvert in me is in the forefront that I just don't want to ask for something, but I have to.
Saw it firsthand a few weeks ago, by the way, buddy.
Oh?
Oh, yeah.
What was that? Well, we can talk offline. But sometimes I can't. Sometimes I just don't have the energy to do it.
There's just a shutdown.
It's just,
boom.
you just boom. And so I do
And
feel
socially, it's interpreted as...
Yeah.
What is this?
What's your problem?
What's your problem?
What's your problem?
Are you upset with me? You're not telling me? Like, what just happened here? But that's
I got
real.
you now. It just happens, and learn from it. I don't want to say it happens when it's not a mistake, but I think that it's something you have to be aware of to do better next time and communicate a little bit more next time. It's what's going to happen. So things do change, as Julie has shown.
You're not a burden.
Oh, thank you. I do struggle with it.
You're not a burden due to your hearing loss.
Oh. All right, let's move on, shall we? So, all right. So, do you want to go first with your books?
Oh, you're going first, or am I going first?
Go first.
Oh, wow. Hearing loss in action, folks.
She didn't hear me.
This is from my sister-in-law. Okay, I love her so much.
Okay.
She's amazing.
What do you got?
Every time she comes and visits me in Maine, it rains. Never fails. We're talking 6 years of rain with this woman.
That's a lot of rain. What do you got?
She brought me a cloud.
Oh!
Okay, last summer she showed up with a cloud. So this is Judy the Cloud, who causes all kinds of problems every time she comes to the weather. But she also bought this book, The Fair Weather and Rainy Day Handbook. This thing had me laughing so hard. I have to look at the publication date. I was screaming because it's a reprint from the original edition was printed in 1900.
Wow, really?
Under the title New Ideas for American Boys, The Jack of All Trades. It's hysterical. So I probably wasn't hysterical at the time, but for me, I'm like, really? I'm going to go outside and do this? So some of the things you can do on a rainy day, you can, let's find a good one here. Oh, this is fair weather ideas. I need the rainy idea. Hang on a second. Rainy day ideas. You can make a circus in the attic. And it gives you directions of how to make the horses, the animals, and how to make the costumes. And let's see. It tells you how to build a bike. Let's see. Oh, it's directions on how to make knickerbockers if you want to dress up as the clown. And part of what you need for the circus costumes is something we all have lying around the house. Is an old felt hat.
Oh, of course.
That you can mold into like the clown hat thing with the pom-pom. This book is a riot.
That's awesome.
It's great. It's funny because you're looking at it from the lens of 2026. Right. But it's actually really, on the same token, kind of cool to see what was out there before the internet, before toys. Mm-hmm. Another one is a Wild West show in the house. The patterns here are given. There are patterns to help you cut out your animals and design them.
It's pretty awesome.
It's a riot. So anytime it's the bad weather, you can find me, I don't know, doing Annie Oakley in the living room. I'm not really sure. So anyway, that's my pick for this week.
Excellent. So I have...
This one's for you, Judy.
Yeah. I have How to Be Okay When Everything Is Not Okay by Jenny Lawson. And so she was the first person I read that was so brutally honest about mental health. Mm-hmm. She has chronic illness, both physical and mental, and she's so honest about it. And she's got such a irreverent sense of humor, and this is not for the faint of heart. And if you like G-rated language, this is definitely not your cup of tea. But this book is a little different from her other books, where she's kind of giving you tools to how to deal with everything when it's a dumpster fire. So it's more
strategy-based, where other ones are more
anecdotal.
Biographical.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that too, because she uses herself as a model. But like this one is more like it's encouraging. Like it's okay to not be okay, and sometimes that's hard to accept. Especially when things are definitely not okay in certain situations. And so it's just, I love her sense of humor. And for Mental Health Awareness Month, I can't not recommend a book by her. And this one came out 2 months ago, or a month ago. And I read it in like a day. It's quick read, it's funny, it's sad, but it's helpful.
I think I'm going to read it on the plane next week.
Yeah, I think
that'll be one of my books.
It's great. So you can't go wrong with anything by her, but this was more of a helpful one than the other ones. There's a Misery Loves Company type thing with her other books, and she's just a great writer. But this one, she goes an extra step, and she's like, okay, do this. Cool. This is when you should read this chapter and stuff like that.
That's cool.
How to Be Okay When Nothing Is Okay by Jenny Lawson. All right, so that is it for week 2. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this.
That's right.
Visit our merch store. We have a Patreon store. Please do all that kind of stuff. All the links will be below.
And every bit helps us with our mission of this business. We don't take a salary from it. Mm-hmm. Please consider even a $2 monthly donation through our Patreon. Definitely buy some merch. Oh, my God. The stickers, the mugs, the shirts, adorable. They're based off of our Boston Terriers. Yes. And you can find all of this on our website, dttproductions.com. Please do subscribe on YouTube because it helps boost our followers. It helps boost our numbers. And hopefully we can start to monetize through YouTube and our social media at some point. So every little bit helps. We appreciate your support.
All right. Thanks, guys.